Welcome to Women in the Arena podcast, the podcast celebrating women doing extraordinary things in plain sight. I'm your host, Audra Egan, and our mission is to elevate the value, strength, and resilience each woman brings to the world. Without further delay, let's go ahead and start the show. Welcome in, everyone. My name is Audra Egan. I am your host for the Women in the Arena podcast, where we celebrate women doing extraordinary things in plain sight. These women are accessible women. These women are your neighbors. They are your friends. They are your sisters. They are you. They are relatable. You understand who these women are, and I wanted to give a platform to them to help celebrate their magnificence. And it is my hope that these stories will inspire you, perhaps challenge you at times, and unite us all in showing how incredibly diverse and remarkable we all are. So without further ado, I am very pleased and honored to bring you the Women in the Arena. Welcome, everyone, today to the show. I am really excited to share with you a wonderful person, an incredible, intelligent, multi-talented, and has a serious wicked green thumb. It is my pleasure to introduce to you my friend, Sydnee Stein. Sydnee, say hello to everyone.
Hi, nice to be here with everyone. I'm super highly complimented that you asked me to come on this podcast. So thank you, Audra, for that.
Thank you for giving us your time and being so open to share a part of you with us. Before we dive in, will you give a small introduction of yourself so everybody can get to know a little bit more about you?
Yeah, so my name is Sydnee Stein, and I am sort of a jack of all trades, really, for different things. I've always been sort of a multi-interested person. When I was younger, I grew up with a long line of teachers and coaches, so I've got a lot of actually sports in my background. So when I turned up as a musician, they didn't quite know what to do with all that. Was really pretty good at music from an earlier age. I kind of parlayed a bunch of those two things into, the business world. I was a banker for well over a decade here in the DC area. And then the last 5 years have been working as an account executive within the mortgage space and working with banks and credit unions as our clients. So I think that's how we met, was in that world. I think I keep pretty busy. I teach some flute students, so really I've got a lot going on. I feel like I'm busy just giving that resume.
Basically, what that means is that you live a full, rich life. You exercise the use of both sides of your brain, both right side and left side, which definitely leads to having a very busy and complete life.
Mm-hmm.
When we dive in, let's first start with you are a flautist, correct?
I am. I have been a flute player since the 6th grade, and I played some piano from just before that time. So, yeah, I've really enjoyed being a flute player for a very long time, and have been fortunate to have great teachers in my life, which is sort of a recurring theme that you'll probably hear over the course of this podcast, is just how many great teachers I've been fortunate enough to have. Whether that was for flute or anything else, really. But yes, I'm a flute player. I am an amateur flute player, although I play in a lot of organizations. I certainly don't want to confuse anyone. I don't get paid for playing flute, at least not very often. I do get paid for teaching flute, but definitely work within that passionate amateur space that is actually a huge part of music and arts these days, is those of us who work a different kind of job for our living, but we tend to spend literally all of our time and energy on music endeavors. So.
Well, I think that you are being very modest because you have, even though you are amateur, quote unquote amateur, you've played in some pretty impressive arenas. Would you mind sharing a few of those? Since it is in the DC area,
Yeah.
there are some very prestigious arenas there that have music and theater and arts, and you've played in many of them. Would you mind sharing with which ones you have definitely given your gift to, if you will, to the audience?
Yes, and you know what? One of the things about living in the DC area that is so amazing and wonderful is that we are rich with opportunities to either go and hear great music or theater or see great art. I mean, a lot of the stuff we do, obviously the Smithsonian's, they're even free. I mean, living in the nation's capital is a pretty amazing thing just by itself, because there are so many people here that are gifted and talented. I mean, it's really the best of the best. From our country. So yeah, I've been able to play at some really amazing places. I play with the Columbia Flute Choir, which is out of Falls Church, Virginia, and it's a very active flute choir. We've got a ton of what we call hardware, a lot of plumbing going on there. We've got big flutes that can get up to, I don't know, 8 feet tall. So we've got a lot of that stuff, and we've been able to play at the White House. So we usually go during Christmas time, and we play for a lot of the tourists that come through to see the White House decorations. So I think I personally have been there for maybe 4 administrations, playing with that group. So that's super fun. And then obviously we've got something as amazing as the Kennedy Center right here near us. And so I've been able to play on stage actually with James Galway. I will point that out because that's one of the highlights of my life is, be on the same stage, the main concert stage at the Kennedy Center with James Galway. My choir again was able to accompany him as he performed for an audience there. So that was pretty darn cool, I have to say. And just getting to play in places like the Atlas Theater, and we've got no shortage of great spaces and people here in DC.
You are very fortunate. I think it's incredibly impressive that not only have you played at the Kennedy Center, which is something that I'm sure that many of us are familiar with as watching the Kennedy Center honors on TV, but being invited to play through 4 administrations at the White House. Many of us haven't even seen the White House, let alone playing music at the White House. This is all incredibly impressive and remarkable that you get the opportunity to do this. I wanted to talk to you about, which I think that people may have gleaned a little bit about this, and just hearing you speak, is I wanted to talk to you about passion, because I know that you are incredibly passionate about music. And while your music has nothing to do with your day job, it is what fuels you. So would you mind giving us a little bit about keeping your passion alive and how you continue to chase it and keep it as an importance in your life when you can get completely distracted and overwhelmed by the business of being, a human being that needs to make a living?
Passion has changed for me many times over the years. So I think when I was coming up through school and, just middle school and high school, I think what kind of drove that passion for music is that I was somewhat good at it. There was always that something in me that I wanted to be the best at it at the time, right? And not knowing really what that meant, because I grew up in a rather small town just outside of the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex in Texas. And I remember just being so motivated by the idea that I could maybe even be the best musician in the town, right? And it drove me. It really did. I was passionate about being the best at the time. And then, I spent time in, they have, the statewide solo ensemble competitions. I think they have those pretty much everywhere, but I definitely competed in those, and competing for the all-state band type stuff. I participated in a lot of that, and I got to hang around with a group of kids from another school, because I was really the only one from my high school that really participated in those things at the time. And so I sort of became an adopted member of a group of band kids that were from a rather large school near Dallas. And what was really fortuitous for me is that band director was very cool about letting me just sort of hang with his kids. And it just so happened that band director's wife was a prominent and well-known professor at where I ultimately went to college, University of North Texas. It was, 45 minutes from my hometown. And so my parents were like, I don't know about, going to take flute lessons once a week, 45 minutes away. That's a lot to ask of parents, really, to invest that kind of time and energy into their kids' musical training. It finally did sort of happen, and I was lucky enough to take private lessons from this amazing teacher, and I really owe a debt of gratitude there that is beyond, because I have a very solid foundation in my flute education. And I think I got quite a bit of that passion from her, and it just kind of fueled the flame that was already there. So I went to university there, and I remember when I arrived at University of North Texas, I thought of myself at the time as a hotshot, flute player from, this little town in Texas. And I was not prepared mentally for the shock and awe of showing up to a major world-class music school. And I'm a classic type A, Audra. So we demand perfection from ourselves to the extent that it's no longer possible to achieve it sometimes, right? And really super hard on ourselves when we don't hit the goals. And so I think what really was a pivotal moment in my education was when I realized that, gosh, I don't know that I can be the top 2% of worldwide flute players, right? Well, if you can't be the top 2%, seriously, why bother at all? Because you don't have a contribution to make. And I actually left music for a good while. After college, I just kind of left it. And I didn't play again until probably 14 years later. Just literally didn't pick up the flute again until I came to Washington. And I remember I was living in this wonderful condominium that it was my first home purchase, right? What I remember about living there at that time was the neighbors. I was very fortunate because several of the neighbors that I hung out with were all in World War II era types of lives. Like there was one that was a pioneer in the aviation industry and was super passionate about planes. And then there was dear Saul, who was really my favorite. So he's a World War II veteran, still alive. He's still with us in his 90s. I remember telling him that I was, a musician way back in the day, but yeah, I don't play anymore. And he's actually the one that I should credit with getting me back into flute playing, because you've got all that education, you play for yourself, even if you can only blow one last note, you've got to pick up the flute again and play. And so, he was just so super passionate about it that I kind of got caught up in it, thinking, wow, maybe I could still be somebody with music. And so I went and pulled that thing out of the closet and started blowing notes, and it was just terrible. I remember just being appalled at what I heard coming out of that flute all of a sudden. So I was like, oh, well, I have to take some lessons. And so I reached out to, actually it was someone that at the time she was the concert mistress of the National Symphony. I reached out to her with a cold email and I said, I'm here in the DC area and I wonder if you could recommend a teacher. And boy, didn't she recommend a teacher. Like she introduced me to Alice Weinreb, who at the time was the acting principal flutist for the National Symphony. And so I took lessons from Alice for several years, and I really, I worked hard to get all of that stuff kind of back. And being much older this go round, like you never really get 100% of what you had when you were 20, when you quit. I was really passionate about getting my chops back, so to speak. So, it was one of those things that I was just very lucky to have great teachers. I kept looking for great teachers, and I've always been one that believes that, when the student's ready, the teacher will appear kind of thing. And I pursued it, though. I was passionate about finding those people who could make me better.
Well, the question was, surrounding passion, and you speak about your craft with passion. And as you were speaking, I pulled out some things that I thought was really remarkable, and things that I wanted to repeat back to you, because there were some themes that I heard as you were describing your journey through your musical career that I think is worth repeating. And the first thing that I heard was your dedication. You spoke about, all of the opportunities, and it's been fortuitous that you got to meet this person and this person and this person. Are you familiar with the phrase, the harder I work, the luckier I get?
Yes.
That
Yeah.
I think that is very real in your journey, is that you worked really, really hard, and
Mhm.
opportunities opened up for you because of that. And I think that that's important to know, that you made time and effort dedicated to your passion, which not all of us do. And I think that
Mhm.
that is an incredible feat, to be able to do that as a lifetime dedication.
Yeah.
The other thing that I heard, which I think is really, really important to hear, is that passion evolves.
Mm.
And while you were passionate about being one thing when you were younger, it changed, and
Mhm.
it was okay for you to walk away from your passion again.
Mhm.
It was fine that you said, I need to take a step back and say, this isn't right for me right now. In your
Mhm.
thoughts, by stepping back from it, and like I said, I have my own perception of what it did for you,
Mhm.
but I'm interested in hearing how you feel stepping back from it made you a
Mhm.
better musician, because I know you, and I've been able to hear you, and I think you're a remarkable musician. And you're obviously
Oh, thank
obviously have, more mature than you were when you were 20. um but what do you think it's done for you, taking that step back and then re-entering it and fighting for it again?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I think that's what was the catalyst for it being about drive and ambition versus actual passion for me. Because having left it, I think when time goes by like that, you sort of forget what it was that you loved about it, right? And then for a time, it's almost like losing an old friend, for a time, it's like, well, something's missing, but I don't know what that is. And then as I found my way back to flute, or to music in general, really, I think that's when it sort of became like, oh, okay, this is the old friend that I really had a great love for. What I really worked very hard at was coming at it with a little bit of humility too. And so I started working on, hey, I just want to be able to play with my groups and not embarrass myself. And then it moved into, no, no, this is starting to sound really good. Now I really want to work on, you know, my technique was X when I was in college, and I'd just like to get 50% of that back. And then it was 75%. And then you kind of become a little obsessed with, chasing the dream again. So I wanted to find a group that I could play in that was going to challenge everything that I did. You kind of put something out into the universe, and it was a process of, I'm just going to put this out there and release the outcome, right? I'm just going to work. I'm just going to try. I'm just going to connect with people, and I'm just going to try to be a positive force. After a period of time, like, opportunities would start to come to me, and I'm a competitive person by nature, Audra. I think that's also part of the personality type, is we're just super driven. And I worked a great deal on trying to become that person that I'm not competing with other people because I want to see them go down and I get to carry the flag. I want to compete and help someone else get better, and I want them to help me get better. But at the end of the day, I really want to be able to say that I sincerely support my fellow flute players and my fellow musicians, and if there's anything I can do to help further their career, I'm happy to do that. And where can we find the joy in it, and how can I help somebody else get there? Because a lot of us have studied music in high school, as an example, and left it and never picked up an instrument again. And I think it's never too late. It's never too late. You can always get back in it. You can do whatever you want to do as long as you're willing to work hard and just kind of dive in and let yourself go with it.
I think that is a powerful message, that it's never too late and to dive in. And what is stunning to me is, I asked what had changed when you left it for 14 years. What you're sharing with us is that it became, when you returned to it, it became less about you as you worked through it and more about what you can do for others. And in turn, it sounds like as much as you gave of yourself for others, you were getting tenfold. Without that being the end game, it sounds like that's exactly what has happened.
That's exactly what has happened. And I literally said that just the other day, that the more I have tried to support other musicians, however that looked, whether it was, hey, come play in my flute choir, we could use another good flute player, or it was, hey, let me introduce you to XYZ over here. They play, in this orchestra that I'm a part of, or trying to cultivate donors or whatever. The more I have tried to make it about someone other than Sydnee, the more opportunities have come to me, which is crazy, because now think about it. We're in Washington, D.C., right? And I can literally throw a stick in any direction and hit 10 flute players. I can, and they're all really, really good. So it's never really about being the best flute player. It's about, who are you a good fit with? Are you bringing something to the team? Are you sharing some value? I mean, I think it's about more than just being the best flute player, right? And the more that I can help other people achieve whatever it is. And I especially love seeing some of the younger folks that are coming out of graduate school. I mean, these people are highly educated musicians. I did not pursue a graduate degree in flute, and I love seeing them come out of college where it's like they're looking for their first real spot in an actual orchestra that pays money to have them. And it's like, wow, I wonder, do I even have a connection? Could I introduce them to someone that has an actual orchestral career? And it's really kind of funny, because now it brings me great joy to be able to make an introduction like that. And I'm fairly passionate about doing those kinds of things now. I look for opportunities to do it. And as I do that, it seems like I get more opportunities to do other things.
So you are active, clearly, in making sure that those fires of your passion, chasing your passion of music, continue. And as I said before, the more you give of yourself, it seems like you get so much more back. There are people listening right now that walked away from their passion, and they probably look at it longingly and go, gosh, I don't have the time, I don't have the patience, I don't have this, I don't have that. And you are an example of all of that. Self-talk is absolutely wrong. If you had to make a statement for people to hear that are on the fence of whether or not they should jump back in and chase their passion, what would you say to them?
So first of all, you should know I am the queen of negative self-talk. I have had to work on that for years. And, that's a tough one, because that's a loud voice right there. And I think for those folks that have walked away from what once was a passion or a drive or a serious interest, I think Certainly for me, it was about you are not too late to make a contribution that is valuable to someone. And that's really the point of it for me is I don't want to just leave this earth never having done anything that adds value somewhere. And it's not necessarily as a player that I add value. I'm a solid flute player. Like I can, hold up the bottom end of a section pretty easily. But I'm no, James Galway. I'll tell you that right now. And that's okay because you don't have to be to make a contribution. Look, whatever it is that lights you up and makes you feel as though you're making a contribution, pursue that with reckless abandon. Do you know what I mean? Like it's a terrible excuse to say, oh well, there's not enough money, there's not enough time, there's not enough talent, whatever it is. We all come to the table with time, talent, and treasure, right? And so you define it for yourself, and I think you do whatever small thing you can do with whatever you've got. I literally would just find that thing that lights me up and pursue it as though your hair was on fire, and just release the outcome of all of that, because it's not really the outcome that matters, it's the journey.
That is an amazing note to leave this on. No pun intended note.
I like it. That's great.
But to chase your passion with reckless abandon. I wrote that down as you said it. And to release whatever the outcome is out into the world. Maybe that's not your responsibility as to what the outcome is, but to chase whatever it is as if your life depended on it, because in some cases it might. So I always end my interviews with 3 questions that I ask everybody.
Okay.
So are you ready?
I think so.
Okay. So my first question is, what are you currently reading?
Oh, good. That's good. I'm currently going back to read like all the Jane Austen books.
Oh.
So right now I'm on Emma. I haven't read these in years, but I love Jane Austen.
Who doesn't? I mean, it's Jane Austen.
Yeah, exactly. So right now I'm on Emma, but the reason that I went back to those books is because there's this new show on, I think it's PBS Masterpiece, Sanditon, which was the last book, the one that she didn't finish. And so they've made a series out of it, and it just reminded me of how much I love that era. I love the clothes. I love the way they talk. I love the way they string words together. I think I'm an Anglophile at heart. I adore everything about what Jane Austen did for her female characters, and they're so strong, but they're within the confines of, that old way of doing things. So
everybody take notes. PBS Masterpiece.
Yeah, it's really good.
So they do some great stuff, but take notes. Yeah. As we're all in lockdown and might need something else to binge watch.
For sure.
My second question is, what are you currently learning?
That's a good one. So you mentioned that I love to garden, and we moved to this new house, which is actually built on old Virginia farmland. So it's a little bit further out of the DC metropolitan area, about 35 miles or so. So it's not like rural, but it's, as close as we could get without actually being in the country. One thing about Virginia and gardening is that we've got the worst soil ever. We've got this hard clay soil. And listen, I love flowers, but not all flowers love clay soil, right? And there is not enough soil amendment in all the world that could combat the kind of soil we have. So I just took a class on planting native plants, and it was fascinating to me. And so now I've always been into perennial gardens just because I don't want to work this hard forever. But I want a perennial garden so that it attracts all the pollinators that, they're in a serious crisis right now, especially, bees. And, so I want to plant perennials, and I want to plant native plants. And so I've been learning all about native plants to Northern Virginia, and have been, pursuing that with reckless abandon and lots of extra cash lately, frankly. That's what I'm doing these days.
That is a worthy cause, saving our honeybees.
Absolutely.
We need the bees.
Mhm.
Everybody plant flowers. My last question is, what's next for you?
Oh my goodness. Do you know I ask myself that question all the time. I think I've made peace with the fact that I'm gonna be one of those people that pursues, right? Like I think it's how I'm hardwired. I cannot seem to get away from the idea of pursuing something. I've gone back 100 times to, oh well, maybe I should get an MBA, or maybe I should just throw caution to the wind and go into running arts organizations for real. Like maybe get out of the type of work that I'm in now, which is basically technology sales and account management, and run toward what I'm really passionate about, which is growing arts organizations.
Well, I think you might have answered your question. It was pursue your passion with reckless abandon. So I think you answered your own question. Uh, so
Well, if they'd let us go out into the world again, I might give it a try, right? But
absolutely. Hopefully soon. Hopefully
yeah,
soon. Well,
yeah,
Sydnee, before we let you run away, we
yep.
can't let you go without listening to a little bit of your artistry.
Oh gosh.
So, if you wouldn't mind, if you'd play us just a little bit of something so we can get a taste of your passion.
Okay. Well, if there are any flute players out there, don't judge harshly. So I'll play. This is an alto flute, by the way, and I love the alto flute. It has a lot of soul. It's kind of like listening to the cello. So that's what I'll be playing.
Oh my goodness, Sydnee.
How about that?
Oh my goodness, that was beautiful. That gave me
Oh,
chills just
thanks.
sitting here. Oh my goodness. That was
Oh,
that
you're
was
so kind.
stunning.
Thanks.
Sydnee, thank you
Oh,
so
thanks.
much for your gift of time and vulnerability. I so appreciate you doing this interview with me and sharing a bit of yourself with a piece of the world. And I can't thank you enough for doing this.
Well, thank you. The pleasure was really all mine, to get to run on about music and stuff for an hour. That's pretty high quality stuff right there. So thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed myself.
Wonderful. Thank you again. And we'll see you all next time. That's our show today. Thank you so much for joining me. But before I let you go, I have 2 items of business that I must get out there. Number one is I want to talk to as many women as possible. So please, if you know someone or you are someone that is ready to share your story, please hit us up on our socials at Women in the Arena on Facebook or Arena Women on Instagram. Next, I have some giant, big fat thank yous that I need to extend out there. Number one is to my guests. Without you, there is no show. So thank you so much for your generosity of time, your willingness to be authentic and completely vulnerable and share a piece of you with us. Next is to my audience. I appreciate and am grateful for your gift of your time, and I hope that you have used it wisely with us. Next is to our composer of our intro music, that is to Star Diva, who's incredibly talented. And last, but certainly not least, is to my producer, my number one son, my son Gavin Agan. Without you, this show is just a bunch of ramblings and recordings that don't make any sense. Thank you so much for everyone who's joined me, and I look forward to seeing you next time.
This is just the beginning.
That's our show. I am so grateful for each and every one of you and your unwavering support and your continued belief in this movement that has become much bigger than me, much bigger than just a podcast. It has become this forward momentum that we are all doing together. If you are ready, or you know somebody that is ready to tell your story and share your value with the world, please connect with me. You can reach me at audra@womeninthearena.net. I am so honored and thankful that you will share your story with me, and I'll make sure that it is well taken care of. I will never stop thanking each and every one of you, and I cannot wait to talk to you again next week as we share another woman's story and we celebrate her doing extraordinary things in plain sight. We'll see you next time.